Today on Survival Dispatch News, we're going to talk about bushcraft skills that you can use for urban survival. This Survival Dispatch video is brought to you by Nutrient Survival. Nourish your body, power your mind. And we're back with Survival Dispatch News, and we have a very special guest joining us today. We've got Casey with Georgia Bushcraft. But before we get into our discussion, I want to make sure that if you like this type of content, you get down there and you smash that like and subscribe button, click the little bell icon next to it to get notified every time we upload new content here on Survival Dispatch. But Casey, it is a blessing to have you with us today. Give us a little intro of who you are and what you guys do.
Hey, I really appreciate you letting me come on and talk today. So my name is Casey Deming. I'm the owner and director of Georgia Bushcraft. We're an outdoor education company based in Watkinsville, Georgia. We host and facilitate events throughout the year out here on our property. We really have two main events that happen throughout the year: our fall gathering and spring camp out. And so we have people that come from all over the country. Several international folks that come down and learn how to be more self-reliant, get outside, and just enjoy doing things that aren't, directly behind the screen all the time. So,
dude, I totally get that. It's so important to just kind of get out there and practice these skills that, maybe have been lost on, from several generations, having passed and not having to use them. But, I think one overarching theme that I hear a lot is like, well, I live in the suburbs, I live in an urban, setting in an apartment or something like that. What can bushcraft skills really do for me? So maybe could you give us like some insights on that, on what that could be used for in a survival situation?
absolutely. So bushcraft, I mean, a lot of people are like, what is bushcraft? Like, what does that mean? And to me, bushcraft is taking primitive or self-reliant skills and kind of honing them, where really time isn't a big deal. So like your emergency survival type situations, time is kind of essence, depending on, it really just depends on where you are. You're in the city or in the woods. But bushcraft is really just honing those skills and learning to do things with the stuff that you have with you. So being more self-reliant, and part of that is being prepared and knowing that, what potential issues you're going to run into. So, being in an urban environment, you kind of have to carry the stuff with you that you would have to deal with on that type of, in those type of situations, so probably a decade ago, we live outside of Atlanta, and we had, they call it a snowpocalypse. We had like an inch of snow, but it turned to ice, and in Georgia, that's a big deal. And it happened right in the middle of the day. And so it was probably on like a Friday or something. And so everybody in Atlanta had this like mass exodus from their jobs and schools. And so everybody had to leave. And so everybody was on the road at the exact same time. The snow was falling. It was cold enough to freeze. And so that 1 or 2 inches of snow turned to ice immediately. And so nobody could get anywhere. And so everybody was kind of stuck in place. A lot of people weren't prepared to be able to walk out of that situation. A very real situation that happened not that long ago. And so being prepared, with the right type of gear. So for instance, keeping a pair of sneakers in your trunk. You know what I mean? Something where if you have your dress shoes on, or whatever guy, or having the ability to leave that environment comfortably or at a faster pace would be a pretty big thing. Also, dealing with the elements, so different types of year. So right now it's going to be 100 degrees here in Georgia, so it's hot, right? And so keeping, maybe a case of water or the ability to filter water with you, near you, if you're in your vehicle, or in a bag, if you carry a bag, or even like the belt I'm wearing. So Wazoo Survival Gear, some of my really good friends, and one of our sponsors and vendors, they make a belt, their cash belt. So the Wazoo Survival Belt, to me, I always have the means of water purification, or they even make this really cool small bag that you're able to contain, if you got to catch water, and carry water somewhere to be able to boil it. So having the tools and the knowledge, that's really what is important. So knowing where you're at and having the stuff with you and what to do with it is key in any sort of survival situation, urban or in the woods, you know, in a remote location. So where I am with no internet or barely enough internet to have this call.
All right, guys. So, Casey was talking about living in a remote location, and he actually does live in a remote location. So his internet is maybe not as solid as mine here living in the suburbs. So we decided to just go ahead and kill his video, but he's still here. I promise, guys. So he'll be chiming in. So, no, I remember what you were talking about with snowpocalypse there in Georgia, because I was working for a company that had an office there, and they were like emails going out. And I think it's what you guys share, like one snowplow between, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama.
Without a doubt, man. They're not used to dealing with that kind of condition. And with the size of the population of Atlanta, it was just a cluster.
It was.
And my wife, she's a teacher, and so at that time, where she was working, she basically was stuck on her way home. Luckily, she had, a Subaru, who her all-wheel drive vehicle was able to kind of get through a lot of where other vehicles couldn't. She ended up being fine, but it took her like maybe a 20 or 30-minute drive, took her like 4 or 5 hours.
Oh yeah.
Because you have complete intersections that are just gridlocked. You just can't go anywhere. So you have to literally go around everybody. So, but we had friends and other folks we knew that, in their penny loafers trying to walk miles, and good luck trying to do that, especially at a fast pace if you need to.
And especially if you're not used to, that type of weather at all. It definitely is very hazardous to drive on. Of course, here in Indiana, where I live, we're used to all sorts of weather. And so we get our fair share of snow and ice. But yeah, down there in Atlanta, I mean, guys, I probably have no idea what ice even looks like if it doesn't come out of the freezer.
Oh, without a doubt, man, for sure. It was an interesting scenario. One other part of it too that was kind of an eye-opening thing. The cell phone service, it was interconnected, so everybody was using their phones at that time. And so I tried and call my wife, who was on the road, and someone else would pick up. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. So like the lines were being totally jumbled up with this influx of folks using it. And so it was an interesting thought process of, well, what am I going to do now? How do I communicate? That's another part of it is, having alternate forms of communication. A big thing is something simple to do, GMRS. A lot of people don't even think about that. But it costs pennies compared to many of the other services out there. And, your whole family could talk on it, and the range is pretty good. And anyway, so it's just a thought process, is kind of what it boils down to. It's just to think about it ahead of time.
And I think that kind of really gets to having a plan. I think even if you live like, kind of where you're at, and obviously you're not in Atlanta anymore, but if you don't live in the city, but you commute to the city, you still may have to use these urban survival skills and, being able to kind of know what you're going to do ahead of time, especially if comms go down. That's a huge thing. And something that I bet people were not expecting during this disaster that just kind of popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so I don't know. It's just a mindset you have to get into. And once you do it, and then it kind of adds another layer of fun about it too. It's like, what can I prepare for today? What should I over prepare for? Because even the likelihood of these things is pretty unlikely, but at least and you feel a little more confident about it too, about going to these scenarios.
Well, I think it brings up a good point that not all disaster scenarios are like the Mad Max survival thing that we like to dramatize here in the prepper community. Natural disasters alone can really throw a wrench in just everything. I mean, talking about natural disasters, we had a tornado here about a month ago, knocked out power for a good 8 hours. And thankfully it wasn't any longer than that. But, little things like that can just pop up out of nowhere, can really just, throw a wrench in the system and, completely, hose everybody. So having these plans ahead in place, for like, okay, what are we going to do if comms goes down? What are we going to do if the roads are impassable? Do I have things in my get home bag that will help me get there? Am I wearing dress shoes? Then yeah, like what you're talking about, having that pair of walking shoes or, hiking boots that you've already broken in,
Yep.
really
That's
important.
Yep. I think a lot of people, I don't know. I worked in the outdoor industry for a long time before starting Georgia Bushcraft, and I think the majority of the people have this mentality of you just buy something, you buy gear,
Yep.
and you sit on it. You throw it in a bag, you throw it in your trunk, and it gives you this sense of security. But people don't realize, like, when you actually have to pull this stuff out, do you know how to use it? And that really is what bushcraft is about. It's like taking that gear and in an opportunity where you don't have to like worry about it or be stressed, and test it out, learn it, be able to use it, to know if it's crap. Because a
Hmm.
lot of that stuff's real trinkety things, you know. And so I try to explain that to people, like, this is not an emergency situation, is not the time in which you want to learn how to do something, and have fun with it. It doesn't have to be like a doom and gloom thing. You know what I mean? It could be fun for the whole family, and it just makes people rest a little bit easier knowing that they know how to do things for themselves. They're more self-reliant. And kids love it too. Kids love learning how to make fires and,
Oh yeah.
um, doing things that we were all doing 100 years ago, that we've totally forgotten about, that were part of everyday life, and at any point could be part of our lives again.
It's very
Um,
true. It's very true. And I like your idea about getting the kids involved if you have them. Obviously, a great learning opportunity for them. And it lets you break out some of that gear and be like, oh, yeah, this really is a piece of garbage. Or no, this thing's solid. It gives you a lot better, knowledge of your gear, how to use it, as opposed to just putting it in your closet and be like, I got my fire starters. I'm good to go.
yep, I'll get to it when I need it.
Yeah, right.
Um, but the best way to learn, in my opinion, is to teach somebody. And I have two small kids. Not everybody does. So you may have a niece or nephew or your friend's kids. You know what I mean? Spread the knowledge, because you're going to learn while teaching them. They're going to learn from it. And man, when we're old and gray, the next generation is going to have to take care of us. And
True.
if we keep forgetting that, it's a really short-sighted thing. And that's a big thing that I do at Georgia Bushcraft, is we try to push it onto the next generation. Like, learn this, enjoy it, have it be part of your everyday, because you don't know when it will be or not. So
Yeah, the time to fail is now,
yeah,
when there are no consequences. Like if you're trying to start a fire, for if we're going to stick with that example, and you burn through all your timber and you can't figure out what in the world happened. Now is the time to do that, when you can just go down and, to your, like in my area, we have like a little wooded area for like a common area. It's like, okay, you can go and pick up some more twigs, right? And haul them
yep,
back home. But, in a disaster situation, you may need that to cook. You may need that for warmth. You've got your kids who are saying, Daddy, I'm cold. That's the last place you want to be like, okay, now what the heck am I going to do?
yep,
The time to do it is to fail now and figure out what works and what doesn't, when there are literally no consequences.
yep, absolutely, man, without a doubt, for sure. So
Now, you talked about making it fun. Give us some examples of how people can make bushcraft fun, because I think a lot of people see, like on YouTube or stuff like that, guys are going out in the woods and they're talking about like how much it sucks, and oh, I've got to hack this tree down with a knife. Obviously, that's not necessarily practical for everybody, but what are some ways that people can make practicing these skills fun?
well, to me, finding a way that, it doesn't have to be a lot of work, right? It's, you got to kind of think about the scenario or the situation, and what is it you're trying to accomplish. And if you start out with it being fun and an adventure, and an opportunity to kind of relax a little bit and get outside, start there. Go on a camping trip. Go to your state park. Every state in this country, has a great opportunity to get outside. Get out there and experience the outdoors, experience what's around you, and then basically just start learning. Start with fire. Start with, you don't have to make a bow drill your first time. You know what I mean? But like just using a ferro rod, and we live in the South, so we're full of pine trees. Learning what fat wood is, fat lighter, whatever you want to call it. um, nature's amazing tinder source. Figure out what that is. Find some, break some off, scrape it up, use your ferro rod, get a fire going. It doesn't have to be this, Bear Grylls style emergency survival situation. You know what I mean? Like it could be entertaining. And so like with our kids, I try to teach my girls, they're 4 and 8, and so that's it takes a little bit, but
Oh yeah.
find ways that they can learn about nature. You know what I mean? Like do plant walks. We like to do this thing, so we go to the beach a lot, or if we're in the mountains or the woods, we play a game where we see a bit of trash or something, whatever may be lying around, and we play a game. What can we use that for? What other purposes can we make with that? So there's a garbage bag, what could we do with that? You can make a poncho out of it. You can use it to collect water. You can use it to make a primitive shelter. There's a piece of glass. What can you know what I mean? Whatever it is. And so it becomes kind of a game like, oh, I could use this to cut rope and make tinder, or whatever it may be. Just try to find some sort of fun, interactive way. Do a scavenger hunt when you're walking through the woods, and first one to find, 3 different types of leaves. And this is like kid stuff, if you have small kids. But for adults too, I mean, there are other ways of having your own kind of scavenger hunt. You know what I mean? Like what types? Find different types of mushrooms that are out there. Don't eat them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Don't do that. But like, there's tons of medicinal plants and wild edible plants that are in everybody, even in an urban environment, in your front yard. You know, you can go down the list, but to me, teaching kids something like primitive fire is a way to like up their confidence level. You know what I mean? You start with some sticks and you learn how to leverage those sticks and friction in the right way, and you can create enough friction, create a fire. And it's such a rewarding thing to start from start to finish with a product. They see the full process. I don't know. I feel like after COVID and everything, kids, their level of I'm trying to think of the right word. Basically, their confidence level was just put to crap. Like, you know what I mean? They're scared. They're afraid of everything. And so if you can kind of teach them one little thing like that, it's kind of a starting point, Anyway.
No, I think that's a really cool idea, making a game out of it. I like that a lot. And of course, kids love games. And I think that one thing that, in the prepper community especially, is like we put it like, oh, well, this could be life and death, right? This could mean the difference between our survival and, being 6 feet under. And if we kind of take that away and we're like, okay, how can we make this fun? Maybe not just for our kids, but for ourselves as well. It'll be a lot more enjoyable and you'll get a lot more joy out of it. And you'll like doing it as opposed to, oh my gosh, this sucks, guys. It's so terrible, having to, start this fire. But if you're like, okay, how can I do it with the sticks this time? If not, I've got my Bic lighter, or I've got my ferro rod if I need it. But let's try. Let's try making the bow and try and get that friction fire going, and challenge yourself. I think that's really rewarding. We live. You see, like video games like World of Warcraft. Why were they so successful? Because they gave people a challenge, something to accomplish, and they got joy and that dopamine hit from making that accomplishment. And so it's the same thing. Just take it from sitting behind the computer screen, as I say this, sitting behind a computer screen, and get out in the backyard and give it a try.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I definitely think that's I don't know, life is too short not to, and you just never know what you're going to learn. Like if you're not learning every day, you're doing something wrong. So exactly.
No, and I like that.
Exactly.
And just to kind of build on what you're talking about with the kids, I know if you're watching, you don't have kids, you're like, oh, Chris, shut up, get to the next point. Don't worry, we will. Give it just a second. But one thing that I've noticed is kids are so inquisitive and they want to learn, they want to help. It's like we're planning on putting a shed in our backyard later this year. And my daughter, my 11-year-old, is always like, oh, can I help you do it? Sure, absolutely, honey. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what in the world she's going to do, but I'm going to find something that I can do that she can help me build that shed.
Oh, absolutely. And they'll never forget that. They really don't. Certain memories like that, it sticks with them, and they tell their friends, and it's just, I don't know, it's a good thing.
It
So
really is. It really is. So, let's switch gears here. Let's get off the kids because I know I'll see that in the comments. And if you don't have kids, feel free to burn me in the comments. I don't mind. Uh, let's talk about, some kind of beginning bushcraft gear that people should have if they want to do this. Obviously, we're talking about fire starters like a ferro rod. You're probably going to need a decent knife, but what are some other things that people might want to look to maybe add to their kit so that they're ready to start practicing these skills?
Absolutely. So yeah, having a ferro rod or a means to start a fire. If anything, just a handful of Bic lighters goes a long way.
Better than
Um,
nothing.
but having a solid knife is definitely key. I'm the master of this, but like you really only need one. It's like the pot calling the kettle black here. But you only need really good like large fixed blade knives. Something with a full tang. So the blade goes all the way through it. We at Georgia Bushcraft, we have a lot of really good friends in the knife industry, so it's hard for me to say any of them. But having a solid fixed blade knife is key, or even a pocket knife, whatever. A sharp blade goes a long way in the woods, because it's really hard to recreate that. But having a good pack, you can use a JanSport or something like that, but some sort of pack that has some rigidity to it is key. So basically, like something with an internal frame, something that if you do have to carry it for a long distance, I'm not saying go and get like an Osprey or some like backpacking backpack, but like I mean, I don't know if you're wanting me to plug any brands or not, but
Oh, you can do whatever you want here, brother. What works
oh,
best
yeah.
for you?
Well, so I've got a few different bags. Well, I have more than a few, but the kind of the ones that stick with me as far as like having a backpack and organization. I like something that's got some sort of rigidity to it. Like Hidden Woodsman, I really like their packs. They're great for different applications. Very bushcrafty. I think they're solid. They're made really well. I like VanQuest gear. They make some really nice stuff. They're some of our friends, and then I like Arc'teryx packs, or I'm trying to think some of the other ones that I kind of keep with, but something that you can carry a load if you need to, that isn't going to be miserable. Some like a limp backpack is going to make your life terrible. So having a good foundation like that. Throw a 55-gallon drum lighter in your bag, like a garbage bag. I've heard there's several other like prominent bushcraft folks who say that they came up with this type of thing. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's a cheap little thing just to throw in your bag. It's great for if you need to wear it as a poncho, you need to turn it into a shelter, and it's cheap. Everybody's
Yeah.
got trash bags around the house or whatever. That's something that everybody could throw in a bag and forget about it. Even if you're using it as a liner inside of your bag, so to keep your extra gear dry. So that, and then having some sort of means to boil water.
Yeah.
So water's kind of a big deal, right?
Hmm.
We it only takes us a few days to really go without water to miss it.
Oh yeah.
So having a way to contain it and or boil it is definitely important. Think about how I think about putting items into my bags or my car, or whatever, are things that I wouldn't want to have to recreate in nature, or
Oh,
hope to find, right? Man, it sucks making rope or any sort of cordage.
yeah, it
So
does.
like even if it's some paracord, bank line, Dyneema, like arborist cable, whatever, something that's lightweight, some Kevlar, strand, something that you can help lash stuff together. Duct tape does that well too. Um,
Baling wire.
yeah, baling wire, anything like they use it for snare wire. Duct tape's nice because you kind of have a multi-purpose there, because you can use the duct tape to bind things together. Also help with if you have like a hole in something, you gotta patch it up, and then you can use
Yep,
this tinder. It works great for fires, starting fires.
it does.
So whatever things that you don't want to have to recreate, make sure that you have with you. It's just going to save you time and convenience and make your life a lot easier. Um,
Definitely.
and then I don't know, like again, I love my Wazoo belt because I've got a phone charger in there. I've got extra cash in there. I have the means to start a fire, fish, find food. You know, you may not be in a complete survival situation, but man, you
Sure.
maybe a few days. So throw some non-perishable food or a little bit longer shelf food like granola bars, stuff like that. Um, some peanut butter packets, you know,
Can
like
go a
little
long way.
beef. Yeah. Even like seasoning, you get it like Chick-fil-A or like a um at a
Oh,
fast
just
food
like,
restaurant,
yeah,
you
like
know.
those little salt and pepper packets.
Yeah, like Tabasco packets, you know what I mean?
Okay,
Let's say
yeah.
you do have to eat some sort of food you're not really happy about. Well, you throw something like that in there, you can season it up and make life a little bit easier.
A lot more
Um,
palatable.
yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. So those are
Well, I
kind
figure
of
down in the South, you guys pretty much live on that, don't you?
yeah, yeah, we love us some Chick-fil-A, man.
Oh
Uh
yeah.
I'm all about it. I just need one closer.
No, you're absolutely right, especially with the water aspect of thing, because you can go a lot longer than you expect without food, but without water, you're going to be hurting really quick. Now, I mean, obviously here in the survival community, we kind of harp on the rule of three, right? It's 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Now, it's going to be a pretty rough 3 weeks, but one thing that I've kind of discovered is you can really get over a lot of those hunger pangs, with some water. And once you get through it, it's a lot easier to kind of hold off on eating as opposed to drinking, because once you get dehydrated, you're in trouble.
Yep. Yeah, dehydration is definitely not something you want to deal with. And it also affects your body in other ways too. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If you're really dehydrated, you know, your core temperature, it has a lot to do with that. And also your mentality, you know, just to be able to think straight. You're not going to feel really well. And so just the ability, I mean, in North America, there are a few places that don't have water nearby to some extent. You know what I mean? Yeah, out west, or the Southwest, yeah, you're going to be hurting a little bit more for it. So carry it, have it nearby. But you know, everywhere else, you can find water most places. It may be brackish or it may be pretty gross, you know, but bring something that could help at least filter it to some extent, either you know biologically or just physically if it's really sooty. Um, but starting with you know you get a stainless steel Nalgene, there's a bunch of different companies. And to me, stainless steel is great because it's very durable, and it's not that expensive. But you can boil with it; it'll take up, you know, take a lot of hits versus titanium. Yeah, you can. It's nice and lightweight, way more expensive and sweet, but you know, it's going to disform and have its own other issues when you boil it too much. But skip all those steps and just carry a Grail. You know, if you're familiar with Grail, they're one of our good friends and a really cool company that makes some of the best water bottle filters out there. I mean, they'll filter down to the viral level,
Wow.
which is not very common for a lot of filters. Um, and you can just use it as a regular bottle every day. You don't have to use the filter aspect of it all the time. Um, they're kind of pricey. They're you know $80 to $100 starting out. So if that's outside of your budget, you know you may want to reconsider. But just having the means to carry water with you and either to boil it or to be able to purify it with either like chlorine tabs or different types of other you know water purification methods is pretty
Yeah, I
key.
mean, bugs in the water can kill with boring regularity, so you definitely want to make sure that you clear those out. And I'm not talking about mosquitoes here. We're talking about crypto, E. coli, all those
Jar,
nasty.
yeah,
Giardia, that was
Leishmania.
the one I was forgetting. Yeah, that's nasty if you get that. And carrying around a couple of water purification tablets in your get home bag or whatever you've got in your car, your car survival kit can really be the difference between life and death. Because in a situation, even if it's only a partial disaster, it may be difficult for you to get to medical attention. And if you catch one of these and you don't have like antibiotics sitting around, which I know most of us don't have, pounds and mountains of those sitting around everywhere,
Yeah.
you could be in a lot of trouble.
Yep, absolutely. And talk about dehydration. You're going to dehydrate way faster once
Oh
you
yeah.
start having, you know, diarrhea and vomiting, and that's all that comes with all those waterborne pathogens. Like,
Yep.
it's
They are
it's no
nasty.
no bueno.
Yeah, it definitely is not.
Even a life straw, they're cheap.
Hmm.
Like throw one in every vehicle and forget about it. Like
Yep.
that's one of those things you don't. There's no learning curve on those. Like it's you just put it in the water and drink,
Yep.
and you're good to go. So
Pretty
water.
simple.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can kind of maybe like pre-filter that water a little bit, try and get some of that sediment and nasty stuff out with maybe just like a little bandana that you threw in, or you could get the shamag or whatever you want to do to just at least have some pre-filtration. And then I love your idea with the stainless steel Nalgene. It's going to be fairly lightweight. Plus, you've got a carabiner now, so you've got another way to hold things together if you need it. And it's real easy to boil it, make sure that you've killed off all those nasty things that you don't want playing a party in your guts.
Yep. Absolutely.
No, that's really cool. Really good stuff. And definitely important, even, in an urban survival situation where you're like, dude, I got water everywhere. I mean, you can have something like, we've got like a Sealcock key here. It's great, for getting those, external water sources, but I'll tell you that stuff is not going to be clean coming out. So
Mhm.
you're going to want to make sure that you're running that through a filter of some sort, or maybe some water purification tabs at a minimum. But yeah, I kind of wanted to hit on that a little bit and get your thoughts, because we always see, oh, you got to get like these freeze dried MRE stuff like that for your bag. But honestly, you can go, if your plan is just to take the Ankle Express home and you just need to get there. Water is going to be a lot more important, because you're going to be sweating quite a bit, especially if it's hot where like you and I live.
Yeah. 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 You're going to get really thirsty really fast at 100 degrees and 80% humidity. It's gonna suck.
And
Um,
that's dangerous level right there. I know it's getting pretty close to that here in Indiana today, so it's not fun. Let's kind of hit on something here, and I want to get your opinion, since obviously you're out in the woods more and doing things. What are some things that people can do to kind of stay cool in these situations? Because this is something I don't think gets talked about a lot, and I think is really important.
Absolutely. So obviously staying cool and not overheating is key. Heat stroke, I mean, that's a real deal.
Oh
When your
yeah.
core body temperature gets too high, I mean, your organs start shutting down.
Hmm.
Like it's a real thing. And so some of the ways to do it, obviously get out of the sun. Like that's a big part of it, right? Find some shade. Or water. Water's definitely going to cool you down. But find some shade and lay on the ground. The ground is going to be a lot cooler than the ambient air above. You know what I mean? So get flat, and try to reduce your heat exposure or your sun exposure, in any way possible. Clothing option is definitely key too. You hear always the term like cotton kills. Well, yeah, depending on the certain type of the year and the certain area you're in. But you may not want something that's going to wick moisture away from your body. So using something like merino wool, in the summer may or may not be a good thing, or cotton, cotton will retain that water and hold it and not evaporate as fast. So in the summer may not be a bad idea. Um, think about the clothes you wear are just as important as the gear in your pocket or in your bag. Think of your clothes as your gear too. You know, it's another thought, another mentality to kind of get past, but it's important that you don't forget about those things.
And I think that's a really good point, to talk about your clothing and, really mold it to your situation and make sure that you're updating your, whether it's your what you're wearing or what's in your bag, because the last thing you want is for you to have like your shorts and your cotton t-shirt or whatever in your get home bag, and it's a blizzard outside. That's not going to be
Yeah.
so good. So make sure that you're kind of going through your bags, making sure that your clothes are up to date. And just one caveat on that, laying down on the ground, make sure you're on the dirt, not on the asphalt, because that asphalt's
Yeah.
going to be freaking hot. But
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. In an urban environment, don't do that. No,
yeah,
no, no, don't do that. But no, like in the woods, find a shady tree, shady patch area, and kind of just cool off, lean up against a tree, and just get low. And it will definitely help. Um, it'll definitely help your core body temperature. So
no, I was on a mission trip once, and we had somebody get heat stroke. He actually stopped sweating, and that's a big sign. Just if you've never experienced that before, because I know probably a lot of people haven't, as I sit in my air conditioned home. Uh, you know, once you stop sweating, you're in trouble. That's a big danger sign, and so. At that point, obviously, you need to stop. You need to start drinking. One thing that my grandma always used to do when she was weeding in her garden, when she would get hot, was she'd take like a washcloth or a bandana, dip it in water, and put it on the back of her neck,
Yep.
because that'll help pull a lot of ambient heat out of there, and it'll actually make you feel cool a bit quicker if you're having to do a lot of outside work and you're not used to it.
Definitely, without a doubt. That and having a good hat, something to kind of cover your
Yep.
head, um, is definitely important.
Yeah, because let me tell you, getting sunburn on your head sucks.
Oh man,
The
yeah,
worst.
that's no fun.
No,
That's
for
no fun
sure,
for
for
anybody,
sure.
man.
And you think about these situations like we have in cities nowadays. You talked about the snowpocalypse there in Atlanta. Think about something like when we had like 9/11 or all the natural disasters we've got going on right now. I mean, they had that hurricane up in New York. Apparently, California got one. I don't really think they did, but you know, seems like it wasn't as bad as they were thinking it was going to be. But tornadoes in your local area, if that's what you have, hurricanes, obviously down south is going to be a big issue. Just being aware of your surroundings and what could potentially be a disaster in your area is going to be far more likely than something dramatic like an EMP or a nuclear disaster or something like that. I mean, look at the people up in Ohio that had the train derailment.
Yeah.
And their whole area was basically made toxic. They had to bail.
Yep. You need to know when to get out in
Mhm.
situations like that, or yeah, the things. Natural disasters are one thing. Man-made disasters are another. You know, I think it's a lot lower percentage. I mean, it is a lot lower percentage man-made versus
Oh yeah.
natural disasters, at least in this country. Yeah, this time of year we're getting ready for hurricane season in the South, and it's a real deal issue if you're not prepared. At least on a comfort level, you're probably
Yeah.
not gonna die. You know what I mean? If you're sitting through like a cat 3 or 4 or 5, then yeah, you need to probably go. But what you're really going to run into is your comfort level. You're not going to have electricity. It's going to be hot probably, and so your air conditioning's not going to work. Your regular comforts you're used to, our society today. Um, you won't have any internet. You won't have these things. And so trying to figure out ways that just going to make that situation suck less. Um, yeah.
It's a really good way to put it. Honestly, I had some friends who lived through Andrew and they decided to stay there. They were down in Florida when it hit and they were telling me some horror stories
Man.
of what it was like afterwards. So, yeah, if you can get away from something like that ahead of time, if you have advance notice, that's amazing. But if you don't, you got it prepared to make it suck less. That's a really good way to put it.
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna be an inconvenience. It always is. And our society today, we're not used to inconveniences. And so I think if you just change your mindset, and just go with the flow and accept the suck and try to make it a little more comfortable or fun, everybody around you, including yourself, will probably fare much better.
Exactly. Embrace the suck. Definitely a good way. I think all our military people will understand that. So, Casey, tell us a little bit more about Georgia Bushcraft and stuff that you guys do, and let us know how people can get a hold of you if they want to, maybe partake in what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we do those main events throughout the year. So what those really are is we have classes that go on all weekend. So people will come, they'll camp, starts Friday morning, goes through Sunday, and then we have pretty much a class, or every hour we have between 5 and 10 different classes on various subjects. Anything from blacksmithing to falconry to primitive and traditional skills, to astrophotography to homesteading to every sort of outdoor fun, self-reliant kind of activity we have going on. So that happens for 3 days. And then we have vendors. We have a bunch of really awesome companies, a lot of gear makers that come out from all over the country. I think we're almost up to 80 different vendors
Oh,
for
wow.
this year. So basically, you're sharing the campfire with a lot of very like-minded folks. And so it's maybe you're not there to take classes. You're just there to experience the community and just to kind of see what it's all about. Just walking around and having the conversations, or very organic conversations, you're going to learn something. You're going to end up with probably some lifelong friends you never knew existed. It's a wonderful community. And so our next one is in November 3rd through the 5th, and we're about an hour and a half east of Atlanta.
Okay.
Um, But throughout the year, besides those events, we host different weekend workshops. So one of our really good friends and instructors, his name is Bushcraft Kelso. If you follow him on Instagram, so Kelso does different classes for us. He does like a Bushcraft 101 type class. We do wilderness survival classes with him. We do firecraft classes. We've got Craig Caudill from Nature Reliance School. He'll be back here this October, and he does land navigation as well as some kind of back to or beyond the basic type courses. So kind of naturalist type courses. So learning about wild edibles, medicinal plants, things in nature, understanding, when you're walking through the woods, the birds, they're talking to each other and being able to be aware of the situation, what's going on. Craig's awesome. We just do a bunch of different classes throughout the year. So myself and Georgia Bushcraft, we don't really teach classes. We just facilitate the environment so that people can come and learn from these really cool people from all over the country. So that's kind of a gist of what we do. We're actually opening our first store, our first retail store here, which is going to be an interesting thing in the next month or so. I'm also about to launch a Kickstarter for my other company, Bushcraft Coffee, all you coffee drinkers.
You're talking my language.
Man, so we got a whole new different product and that's coming out here actually next week, September 1st. So I'll tell you more about that at some point. I'll send you some goodies to test out.
Sure, love it.
And yeah, so to find us, just georgiabushcraft.com or at Georgia Bushcraft on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the different
all the socials, right?
All of them, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
It's the name of the game these days. But yeah, so that's pretty much how you'll find us.
All right, perfect, guys. GeorgiaBushcraft.com. It'll be down there in the comments and a clickable link if you want to join up. Obviously, that class is coming up here pretty soon. If you're watching this sometime in the future, if you missed it, sorry. But check out their website. They've got plenty of classes coming up here in the future. Thank you again, Casey, for joining us. It was great having you on the show. And
absolutely, Chris. I appreciate it, man.
No, it was a blessing to have you. Thanks again for sharing all of your knowledge, and we'll catch you on the next one.